Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cornix, and welcome to Classy Movie Rambles, where I talk about all the movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is Whispers of the Wind. It's a Studio Ghibli movie from 1994, and it's about 1 hour and 46 minutes long. And the movie starts with a camera panning over a nightscape at a city, and the song Country Road is playing in the background, and then cutting to the main character of Shizuku, and she has been at the store and she has bought some groceries for her parents. So she goes home and they have dinner, her mom and dad, and they sit around the dining table. And their father works at a public library, or he's a teacher or something like that. So he tells basically his daughter Shizuku that they are changing out the library cards to barcodes now because the evolution of everything is going forward. So she goes to her room after dinner and she looks into the book at the back end, and she looks at the library card. And the name Seiji is the last person that borrowed this book, and this name will come up again and again in this tale, so it's kind of important. And she remarks that she's heard or seen that name before, but that's how it is. So the next day, Shizuku wakes up a little late and she has to rush to school. She grabs breakfast and she just runs, and she gets to she was supposed to meet up with her friend Hakara, or Harada I think she was called. But she ignores that and she runs to school, and she asks one of the teachers to open up the library. At this point, it's kind of obvious she's a bookworm and she likes books. So the teacher opens up the library and she finds a book that was made like she hadn't borrowed before. It was made by a donation book basically. And the name CG pops up again, or the last name. She kind of thinks that it's kind of weird. And then her friend kind of arrives, and she's kind of angry at her because she basically didn't wait for her to pick her up. So later the two girls are sitting on a bench, and they have this kind of club, which comes in later in the movie. So they're working on a song of Country Road, but it's, the Japanese versions with their own words. And it's kind of funny because it's just, they laugh at the silliness of it, because it's kind of hard to translate songs from Japanese to English and English to Japanese. And then there is a boy, there's like a sports bag next to him. So the boy kind of asks, like, can you hand me my sports bag? And there is some, Harada has basically gotten a love letter, so from one of the boys in class, and she doesn't really know who it is. This is kind of like a teenage drama movie yet again. So she doesn't want to throw the bag over because it might be the guy that's asking for the bag. But anyway, Shizuku kind of throws the bag over the fence, and Harada leaves. And then she catches up with her a little later, and then they walk and talk basically, and talk about boys and stuff. But on her way, they were supposed to go to a place, but what happens is that Shizuku forgot the donation book on the bench where they were sitting, so she has to go back to get it. But once she gets there is this weird boy sitting and reading the book, and it's kind of this funny scene where she asks for the book back, and he gives it back, and he kind of says like, well, you better be working on that Country Road song because that's not really good. It's not up to snuff yet. And then he leaves. So in the book, the lyrics for their made-up song it was in it. So it's kind of this funny scene where she gets really angry and upset over it, and she kind of rushes off. And the funny thing, and this is a big spoiler, that character is actually CG. With CG, it's kind of funny because he's not acting impolite, but she's kind of thinking that he's this kind of asshole, I guess. And then she goes home and she starts to read the book that she got, the donor's book. And then her sister comes home, and there's kind of this rivalry, or not rivalry, but they're kind of like siblings do. So they make dinner and prep and stuff. And then Shizuki studies some more, and then she falls asleep, and then her sister wakes her up by going with the vacuum cleaner. And then she realizes that she is late for school again, and she also has to take the lunchbox to her father because he forgot it, and she also needs to deliver a letter. So Shizuku takes the train, and on this train there is this strange cat that's looking out the window. And the cat goes off at her stop where she's supposed to get off, and she follows the cat. And she totally forgets about her dad's lunchbox. And she follows the cat, and she loses sight of it, and she finds it again. And all of a sudden the cat is up on a fence taunting a dog, and it walks on down to a shop, a strange shop. She follows the cat into the shop, and there's this strange cat statue with green glowing eyes. And she looks at it, and the store owner, which is this nice old man, kind of says he's nice to her, and he shows her an old grandpa watch, which you wind up with a key. And it displays like this fairy tale story about an elven princess and some dwarfs and how they can't love each other because they're different kids. And all of a sudden, Shizuku realized that the lunchbox is supposed to be delivered to her father. So she runs out down to the public library where he supposedly works. And Seiji catches up with her on his bike. And she hands her the lunchbox because she forgot about it. And on the back of the bike, the cat is sitting. And she's kind of confused. But she rushes down to the library and hands the lunchbox to her father. And then she borrows some books again because she's a bookworm, and she realized that the name, CG's last name, is on the back end of the library card again. And even later she goes to the book club with her friends, and they're supposed to eat a bit, and she delivers one of the final versions of her Country Road song, and they kind of like it. So what happens then is she tries to go back to the strange house again, but it's locked. And then she goes back to her friends, and there's this weird guy, this baseball guy that, you know, the one in the beginning with the backpack kind of thing. And there's this weird drama where this kind of teenage drama, which kind of confused me a bit. There's this love triangle thing because one person doesn't like the other, but the other one likes the other one. It's kind of confusing, mind-boggling, teenage kind of logic, I guess. So the baseball guy or kid, he confesses his love for Shizuku, but she doesn't love him back, and there is some tears and crying. And later she goes up takes a train ride, and she goes up to the strange house yet again, but the door is locked. But the cat walks in like the back door, and she just sits there for a bit, and then Shiji kind of comes and gets her and kind of says like, you want to go inside, and there's this like back door. So they go inside, and she goes up to look at the Baron, and then she goes down to the workshop / there's like this music shop. And Seiji is making violins. So he has this plan that he wants to go to Italy and become a professional violin maker. So that's his plan. And she is kind of like, oh, can't you play something for me? And he kind of like looks at her like, sure. But then you have to sing. And she wasn't prepared for that comeback, I guess. So he starts to play a violin, and of course he plays like the Country Road song, and she sings along. And meanwhile this is happening, the shop owner comes home with his other musician buddies, and they hear the song, and they go down to the basement, and then they start singing and playing along, and they're having a really good time, and they make solos, play flutes, and what they do. And then when the song is over, she realized that the old man's name is the family name, and they're kind of related. I think he's kind of CG's old grandpa or something like that. And then she realized that the donor is actually CG's father, and CG is the one who's been borrowing all the books, and she freaks out about this. So the old man laughs about this, and later CG follows her home, and they talk a bit about what he wants to do. As I said before, he wants to go to Italy and become a professional violin maker, but his parents, especially his dad, doesn't want him to do that. And then they kind of depart. The next day she's late for school, and the baseball guy and they're running together to catch the first lesson. It is kind of a little awkward scene. And then she's a bit lucky because the first lesson is cancelled, and then CG visits Shizu's class, and they have to talk a little bit, but she wants to talk in private, so they go up to the school roof, and he kind of explains to her that he made a deal with his father, and he's willing to let him go to Italy, basically. And he just tells her this because it's the first. He just wanted her to let her know about it at this point. And meanwhile, this is happening. The whole class is eavesdropping on him, and they're standing by the railing, and he's kind of like, the first song I will sing or have it in my head when I'm there is Your Country Roads. And basically what happens is that the whole class drops in literally, and Shizuku gives chase to him and kind of rushes after them. This kind of this embarrassing thing. And then what happens is that she goes home and she eats with her family, and then she goes to see Harada at her place. And basically what they do, they get some tea and they talk about boys, and then she leaves. And Shitsuki kind of decides that she wants to do something like CG, like she wants to do something with her life. So she decides to start writing because that's one of the things she wants to do. So she goes on writing, and she starts to write the history of the Whispers of the Wind, the title of the movie basically. And she gets some tips from the old man, and he kind of says like, well, you and CG are like diamonds in the rough, and it will take some time for you to basically get where you're supposed to be, but practice makes perfect, I guess. And then she walks home and starts to fantasize about the story and what it was supposed to be about. And she goes to the library, and she gets some books for inspiration, and Seiji is there, and he says that he'll be leaving tomorrow and he will be gone for 2 months. So they just sit there and just kind of enjoy each other's company. And then she continues to work on the story. She is in class, and the teacher is kind of upset because she is not listening to what he's saying. And she goes home and she continues to work on the story. And then her mom and sister is kind of upset that she's not doing house chores and whatnot, but she's working really hard on her story. And even later, her father and mother sits her down in front of besides the kitchen table, and she kind of explains to them that this thing that she is doing is really important to her right now. And her father says like, well, I'm impressed that you're working so hard on it. And he asks her if it really is important, and she said yes, it is. So he says, well, you can do this, but think about your grades and whatnot. It's important too, but if you do this and fail, it will all be on you. So she continues to work on the story, and she works really hard, and she has nightmares about it. And then Shizuku takes the first draft to the old man in the strange shop, because that was one of the deals she made with him. So when the draft is done, she leaves it with him, and she's kind of shaken up, and she wants him to read it like right away. And he does, because he's a nice man. And she waits downstairs, and she falls asleep. And when he wakes her up, he tells her basically that the story was really good, but he needs more work on it. And she has poured all of her heart and soul into this story, and he says like, well, diamond in the rough and all that. And she starts to cry. But he's like, well, you know what? He makes her dinner, like ramen or something, and they cheer up a little more. And it's late at night, so he gives her a ride home, and she decides instead to study with her grades, doing that instead. Focus on her grades to make better, the best of it. So in the middle of the night, Seiji wakes her up by throwing stones at her window, caught her attention, and she's kind of confused about this. And she goes downstairs, and he is basically taking an earlier plane home so he can be with her. So it's actually early in the morning. So thunder. It's actually early in the morning, and they go up to this kind of this overlook kind of place, and they look up over the city, and it's all foggy and stuff, and the sun is about to rise, and it paints this beautiful landscape. And he kind of explains to her that he's coming back and all that. Ooh. And anyway, I better wrap up before the power goes out. But anyway, so they talk a bit, and he confesses her love to her, and he said, after I'm done with all my studies and after you're done with everything, would you marry me? And of course she said yes. So there's been this like love brewing in the air and everything, and that's how the movie ends. So what do I think about this movie? It's just like Ocean Waves. It's like a teenage drama. So if I were like an early teen or something, I'd probably appreciate this more. But this is one of those things you actually go through, as I said before, like in Ocean Waves, like the problems you have current are the most important problems that you have, right? And as a teenager, you don't have really, you have expectations on you that you're supposed to go to school, you're supposed to get good grades, and you're supposed to make your parents proud, and you're supposed to prepare to be an adult and all that stuff. So it hits all those points right, but I don't think it's a good movie as that, you know, like maybe watch it once, but not more than that, because it doesn't, you know, it doesn't give that much more actually. Yeah, so anyway, thanks for listening and watching, and take care.